So this video is not to smear China or the West. I'm not being pro-China or pro-West, but there are things that have to be addressed here, and it's been going all over the news over the past few years. And there are issues that have to be addressed about the Uyghurs and the Xinjiang. So we hear these stories that China is committing a genocide against the Muslim Uyghurs, and China is creating these concentration camps, and these people are being persecuted. But if we really go deep into it, is this really true, and is it accurate? This genocide statement had been debunked um, several times. And if you really look into the roots of this, it goes back when there were terrorist attacks in the province of Xinjiang, even in Xinjiang's capital Urumqi. This even penetrated even to China's capital in Beijing. And these were people from that area who were radicalized in Afghanistan because if you look at that border between Xinjiang province, there's a small part in Afghanistan that borders China. And this radicalization of terrorism had went all the way into that area of China. And if you really look what happened in 9/11 of 2001, there were cases of scenarios of terrorist attacks in China, and that's what China is doing. Is China is doing their part to crack down on terrorism, to fight terrorism, and this is not to mention the fact that terrorists that were captured were being sent into this vocational camps to deprogram them from their violent thoughts. China has refuted these claims, and yes they are through their propaganda media outlets, but they're showing these people with free housing, recreational activities, even physical activities like working on factories, working on the farm fields, as one of their ways to help them reintegrate in society. And this is something that Western countries can learn from uh, this from them when they are, reintegrating these people from their radical violent thoughts and try to reprogram them into society. This is something I believe that the U.S. and other countries should do to when they capture these people. But no, because the industrial complexes wants for profit by making the miserable lives of these people. So I'm saying that we should look deep into the situation because once we understand them, we have to really look into first before we can call to action on China for this behavior. And it would be a grave mistake to blacklist or sanction them based on this lie. CCTV and CGTN are Chinese state run media, but they have good information covering stories of Xinjiang. And that doesn't mean that they're all spreading false information, though, yes, they are talking about high praise for China because, they're state controlled. But they have good information about these stories, and they cover stories about people who were de-radicalized from their violent terroristic acts and their violent thoughts. So this is something that has been twisted, and who has got this information that was spread around on international media, especially in Western media, that there's a genocide and there are concentration camps in Xinjiang. So, media outlets like CIA-run Radio Free Asia, and including their organization, the National Endowment for Democracy, are taunting and keep pushing forward with these lies that uh, Chinese government is rounding up, and they're putting them on forced sterilization, forced birth controls, and forced labor. But it's already been proven otherwise. In an interview with Max Blumenthal of The Gray Zone on his documentary about the National Endowment for Democracy, he interviewed Omar Kanat, chairman of the World Uyghur Congress, and then Kanat said that more than 1 million Uyghurs were put in concentration camps, and then Blumenthal replied to him, "Those numbers are high." And then, when asked, he said that he got that number from quote unquote the media. So, meaning to say, the media has got their numbers, but not citing a source where they got that number from. A so-called German scholar by the name of Adrian Zenz, who hadn't been in Xinjiang or the whole of China in a long time, made this statement that more than 1 million Uyghurs are being put in concentration camps and they're being rounded up to be killed and being put on slave forced labor. And as soon as he made this kind of story, and there was a tweet that he shared that he was gonna get a commission from British Broadcasting Corporation, or yeah, and he made that statement, and making this fake stories about like this so-called genocide against the Uyghur Muslims, and it's been spread around throughout U.S. media and media outlets all over, including Al Jazeera, the Qatar media. So, Adrian Zenz is this founder of Victims of Communism Foundation, and it's been debunked several times that this kind of foundation is based on shambolic evidences of genocide committed by communist countries. And he's a member of this far right organizations, including in the US, and even some people in the US are even buying into these kind of statements by Adrian Zenz. So it seems like all this envy with China is just getting higher, because it's like there are persecution of Muslims around the world, especially in Muslim countries, and there are condemnations. There have been some condemnations of persecution of Muslims in India and the Rohingya Muslims in Burma or Myanmar, but they haven't have a big coverage of this persecution of Muslims like the Uyghur Muslims in China. Why is that? It's because it's all this about this China One Belt Road thing or whatever. Maybe it's because they're jealous of China's economic growth. Though I agree that there's an aggressive foreign policy on China, and that China has this aggressive behavior towards its neighbors, especially in Southeast Asia, with that scenario on the South China Sea, and the situation about the Spratly Islands and what they're doing into the territories in Southeast Asia. Yes, I agree. But when you start, all this radical hate because there's a lie that China is committing this genocide, well, we have to look into it first. Though yes, China did made some mistakes in the past, especially with the Cultural Revolution and such so. But yes, they did admit their mistake. So once again, I'm not making this video to smear on any side, but we just gotta be careful with the misleading information that is out there. Though I agree that someone said that if we're gonna define by genocide, it involves with killings and dead bodies. But it seems like what appears to what is happening in the province of Xinjiang by the Chinese government doesn't appear to be genocide. I agree when someone said that if we're going to define by genocide, it involves killings and dead bodies. But what appears to be what is happening right now in that province in China has been proven otherwise. This is also no comparison when the US over the past centuries, when they starting in somewhere in the 1800s, when they separated the Native American families and to bring their kids to be indoctrinated in these schools. We also have to acknowledge as Americans that the internment camps we did to the Japanese Americans in World War II. And we also have to pay importance also what happened in this Trump administration when he ordered the separation of families at the border. So once again, this is my thoughts about the situation at hand in that is going on in the province, and I will see you in my next video.